In the heat of a military desert range, she was nothing more than a shadow, a civilian technician setting up targets for elite SEALs, unseen and unnoticed. That was until one fateful moment when a seasoned chief petty officer recognized something extraordinary in her, something no one else had ever cared to acknowledge. A single shot shattered her anonymity, revealing a woman who had once held the weight of life and death in her hands. Who was this unassuming technician, and what incredible secret lay hidden beneath her quiet exterior? The answers would change everything forever. Karen Lavell wasn't a name. She was a technician, a civilian range specialist on a military base, surrounded by the world's most elite warriors. But nobody cared to know her, and she preferred it that way. The SEAL team, with their hardened, world-weary eyes, barely acknowledged her presence as she moved silently between her equipment and the targets. Their dismissive glances stung, but she endured it. After all, she had a job to do. Anonymity was her armor, and in her world, that was the safest place to be. Every day, Karen meticulously arranged targets, calculated wind patterns, recorded barometric pressure, and adjusted for mirages. The small details that everyone else missed, she saw. But her work was invisible. To them, she was just the woman in the background, taking notes and ensuring the team could do their job. And that was fine. It was the way she preferred it. 5 years on this base had passed in a blur. The SEALs came and went, completing their grueling drills. But it was on this day, this very day, that something shifted. The team arrived, and as always, dust kicked up around their transport vehicles. The commander, Axel Thorne, a man of few words and fewer smiles, led his team through the desert haze. The men were tired, worn down from the stress of qualification drills. But this was the final day. The stakes were high, and everyone knew it. The distant target, set at an impossible 12,200 yards, would prove the true measure of their skill. "Range prepared, sir," Karen called out as she approached the commander, clipboard in hand. Environmental conditions documented, wind shifting northwest at 7 to 12 miles per hour. Thorne barely acknowledged her. "Thank you, Miss Lavell," he muttered without looking up, already moving to address his men. She could hear Lieutenant Merrick, the second in command, whispering to his team. "Look at this civilian micromanaging our range," he scoffed. "Probably learned everything from video games." The team chuckled, and Karen let the words roll off her. It wasn't her place to engage. Her job was to stay invisible, out of the spotlight, unnoticed. But even as the jokes were made, she observed them all with surgical precision. She knew their weaknesses, their flaws, the way each one adjusted their stance, how they breathed, how they focused or didn't. The qualification started, and as expected, the team made quick work of the first few targets. But at 800 yards, the challenge began. Even the elite shooters began to falter. Karen noted every missed shot, silently calculating each one in her mind. Improper follow-through, inconsistent breathing. She watched the team, analyzing each mistake, anticipating the next. But it was when they reached the final target, at the unbelievable distance of 12,200 yards, that everything changed. The heat of the desert was rising, the wind unpredictable, and the SEALs were growing more and more frustrated. Petty Officer Riordan missed 3 consecutive shots before throwing his spotting scope to the ground in a fit of rage. "This is impossible in these conditions," he muttered. Commander Thorne stepped forward, his voice low and commanding. "The enemy doesn't care about conditions, Riordan. Neither should you." Karen didn't flinch at the frustration in the air. She was used to it. She watched from the periphery, silently calculating the wind patterns, noting the increase in mirage distortion as the heat rose. But her observations were ignored until they weren't. Lieutenant Merrick stepped forward for his turn, adjusting his scope with confidence. 3 shots, 3 misses. He turned to Karen, who was making notes in her book, and sneered. "What are you scribbling over there, girl?" he mocked, waving her notebook in front of her face. The team laughed, but there was something different in the air now. Chief Petty Officer Holston, the oldest and most experienced member of the team, watched Karen with narrowed eyes, studying her. He saw something the others missed. Merrick continued his taunt. "Think you know something about our performance, Miss Range Tech? Any professional opinions?" Karen remained calm, her voice soft yet precise. "Just documenting variables, sir." "Variables?" Merrick scoffed. Like what? Karen didn't hesitate. Wind speed shifting between shots. Mirage effect increasing with heat. The fourth target mount is tilted 0.7 degrees left. The team exchanged glances, half amused, half irritated. But Holston, the chief, wasn't laughing. His gaze lingered on Karen, studying her like a sniper scans a target. He knew there was more to her than met the eye. Well, thank you for the science lesson, Professor, Merrick said with exaggerated politeness. I'm sure that's very helpful. Karen nodded once and returned to her station. She was used to being invisible, but in that moment, something inside her shifted. Holston had seen something that was impossible to ignore. As the day wore on and the frustration continued to mount, even the most seasoned shooter struggled. Thorne barked out corrections, his patience thinning, but Karen wasn't watching the shooters anymore. She was watching Holston. He fired his first shot. It missed. His second shot missed as well. But on the third, he adjusted something on his scope, took a deep breath, and squeezed the trigger. The bullet struck the edge of the target. Not a perfect hit, but a hit nonetheless. The team erupted in applause, but Holston didn't celebrate. Instead, he studied the target with a keen eye before looking back at Karen. She quickly looked away, but it was too late. Holston had caught her watching. After a few more shooters tried their luck, Holston approached Karen. You disagree with something, he said softly. It wasn't a question. Karen hesitated. Sir, you had a look when I made that shot. I think you see something we're missing. What is it? She glanced around to ensure no one else was close enough to overhear. It's your windage adjustment, sir. It accounted for the current conditions, but the wind shifting pattern suggests it won't hold for the next series of shots. Holston raised an eyebrow, intrigued. That's a very specific assessment. Show me. Without waiting for permission, Karen stepped back. I should return to my station, sir. But Holston didn't let her go. I think it's time you show us what you got. He handed her his rifle. A wave of silence fell over the range. The other SEALs stared, stunned. Commander Thorne moved to intervene, but Holston raised his hand. Sir, with respect, let's see what our range assistant knows, Holston said firmly. Reluctantly, Thorne nodded. Karen hesitated. She had spent 5 years hiding behind the quiet anonymity of her civilian role. But now the weight of her past, of everything she had tried to forget, was pushing her forward. With one glance at the rifle in Holston's hand, she made her choice. She took the rifle. The transformation was immediate. Her posture straightened, her breathing slowed. She inspected the weapon with practiced hands, adjusting the scope, setting her feet shoulder-width apart. It was like greeting an old friend. Instinctively, her mind calculated the distance, the wind speed, the temperature, the barometric pressure, and the subtle tilt of the earth beneath her feet. Every variable, every factor fell into place. One breath, exhale halfway, squeeze. The shot rang out. 3 seconds later, the furthest target, a dot on the horizon, sang with a perfect, clean hit dead center. Silence fell over the range. The SEALs stood frozen, their mouths agape. Holston's expression was unreadable as Karen handed the rifle back to him, her face neutral, betraying nothing. Just a lucky shot, Merrick muttered, though his voice lacked conviction. Holston didn't reply. Instead, he reloaded the rifle and handed it back to Karen. Again, she took the shot. Perfect. Another perfect hit. And another. The air was thick with disbelief. Commander Thorne stepped forward, his voice low and commanding. Who are you? Karen paused for a moment before replying. Just a range technician, sir. No range technician shoots like that, Thorne replied, his voice sharp. Those are competition-level shots. Holston, still staring at her hands, shook his head slowly. Those aren't civilian hands. Those are shooters' hands. The realization hit the team like a wave. Respect and confusion replaced mockery. Holston finally spoke. I think we owe Miss Lavell an apology. The shockwave of recognition spread across the SEALs. They weren't just looking at a range technician, they were looking at a living legend. Holston slowly stood at attention. Gentlemen, I believe we're in the presence of Deadshot Lavell. It was a name that carried weight. The snipers all knew it. Ghost Recon, Operation Kingfisher, a sniper who had held off enemy forces for 19 hours, saving an entire extraction team, her precise shots making the difference between life and death. Thorne stepped closer, his voice tinged with disbelief. "You're alive?" Karen said nothing, her gaze downcast as if she had never left the shadows.